Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and get started here with our webinar for today. So today I'm actually going to focus on MLA citations, and I'll be going through how to how to cite your sources within a works cited page, and how to directly relate that to in-text citations specifically. So how does those two things work together within your papers, your research papers? So first of all, my name is Quanah Yazzie. I am one of several professional tutors here at Indent College, and I specialize in English and writing specifically. I also do other subject areas, just depending on what the students need. That's how we offer tutoring services here at Indent College. If one of the tutors have excelled in an area, like let's say for instance in math, 190 pre-calculus course, they excelled, they are able to tutor in that course if you want tutoring and so forth. So that's how we run things here at the Learning Center. So it just depends on what you want to be tutored in. So you have to reach out to us to know areas where you, to know areas that we excel in and stuff like that. So I also have Deanna on the other line. She needed to give me access to this Zoom room here that we have. It's the webinar feature of Zoom, and as the attendee, you shouldn't be able to see anyone who is within this room. You should only see me and her screen, maybe just me if I'm in a presenter view. So that's just a heads up on that as well. And then we'll also have a evaluation at the very end of this presentation. And I do encourage you to fill out the evaluation. It sort of helps me, prepare for these webinars in the future. So, what things were exciting, what things were not working and stuff like that. It's good to be critical if you have to, because that really helps me. And yeah, so that's it for that portion. And all right, let's get started. Let's see here. So first of all, when we're talking about MLA citations and things like that, our sole purpose of utilizing and incorporating citations within our papers is to, because we're sort of citing, so we're grabbing these things from the internet and we want to involve it in our paper to sort of support what we're arguing about and things like that. So let me just share my screen here. I'm going to start the presentation. So we want to know how the language is working in terms of MLA, and let's see. Let's see here. This cord might not work. Let's change it really quick. All right, that's not working. Let's try this one. Sorry, hold on. All right, there it goes. All right, so everyone can see this perfectly, right? You wouldn't know, I wouldn't know. I don't know why I'm asking that. Let's see. So during this presentation, feel free to ask questions, and I'll go ahead and answer some of those questions on the way. So you should have a Q&A at the very bottom of your screen, and through that, you can ask those questions, and they'll just pop up on my screen on this side, and I should be able to answer them. There's also the chat feature if you guys want to ask questions in the chat box. All right, so when we're going through this here, so we're looking at a works cited, right? Because a works cited is associated with MLA specifically, because within a works cited page, you know, it identifies the sources that that you're borrowing from the internet and from you know, from published works and stuff like that. There's a ton of sources out there, but with the works cited, we're actually grabbing those things and we're citing within our body of our research projects or our papers and things like that. So here, so the list titled works cited page identifies the sources you borrow, just as I said, and therefore you cite within your paper itself. So then what builds this works cited page is actually a list of the sources that you have, and what builds those sources specifically are what we call core elements. And those core elements spread into things like, you know, the author and things like that. And and there is a specific order in which we ordered these core elements. And so when we go through them, just keep in mind here of the, you know, the steps and the order of how these elements are. So the first one's actually the author. And within the author, we always follow it up by a period. And these punctuations after each element are actually crucial with MLA formatting. And you'll start to see the relevance of what I'm talking about later on. But here we have the author, right? And then we follow it up with the period. So first I'm going over the format of it. So then the next one within MLA is actually the title of the source after the author. And for the title of the source, we actually have to involve quotations, which is a requirement by MLA themselves. And then along with the quotations, we follow that up with a period within quotation marks, just as regular writing, you know, when we're involving quotes within our writing, we always have punctuations within the quotes. So then after the title of the source, we move into the title of container. And then with the title of container, the punctuation from here actually changes within your citation. And here it's actually a comma. So we have author with the period, title of source with quotations and a period, and then we have title of container with a comma. And then from here, the other rule with the title of container is that it has to be italicized, because this is a larger body of work of the title of source. And I'll go ahead and I'll explain, you know, some of those the specifics into each of these elements later on in the presentation. So after the title of the container, we go into other contributors. And then after this one's actually followed with another comma here. And then the next element we go into is version, which is followed up with a comma as well. From here, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of stylistics like quotations or italics or anything. It's basically just regular text. So after versions, we have number with a comma, and then we have a publisher with a comma, and then we have a publication date with a comma, and then lastly, we have location with a period. So the location is the only portion where it has the period. That's where the citation ends. So looking at this format here, it's very crucial in how we understand this format here, the author, title source, and title of container, and so forth. And I'm actually going to teach you how to, you know, identify some of those areas and how to shift things around to make an MLA citation, rather than going onto the internet, right? Because when you go onto the internet, you say, how do I do a citation for a website? And then they give you this whole different citation of how to do it. But I'm actually going to show you how to play around with some of these elements so that it's easier for you to actually just cite sources when you look at a piece of work, and you can just grab those areas and fit them within this and so forth. So when we move on with this, we're going to go into each of these elements specifically. So we'll start with the author first. So with the author, let's see here. So with the author, it's basically, you know, a name, last name, first name, so forth. So in this case, we have this name, right? We have Alan Jacobs. And with MLA, it actually requires us to have the last name listed first. So here we have Jacobs, right? We have Jacobs, and then we have first name Alan. And then, you know, you may be wondering, in some of these cases, there's like maybe a middle name. Where do I put that? How do I include that into this? And with MLA, the easiest way to do that is actually just shifting that period and then just adding the middle name there. So it's not much adding a middle name. So let's just make sure we have a last name, first name, then middle initial, or you can spell it out. It's really up to you, but both of them are actually recognized to spell out the middle name or to abbreviate the middle name. But in terms of MLA, we have to spell out the entire name. So the last name and the first name specifically. And then moving into, if you have two authors within a source and you need to cite it, here's where we also, it's a little different. Here it's actually listing the first author, which is Michael Doris. We have that last name Doris, followed by a comma, and then with the first name Michael. And then we have the second author right next to it with the word and, which is Louise Erdrich. And MLA is sort of confusing in the way they arrange some of these things. And with the two authors portion, this is the only time you'll see this with the two authors. The second name is actually spelled out with the first and last name listed. It doesn't start with the last name, but it actually starts with the first name. So let's go try to remember that when we're going to cite sources. So we have Michael Doris and Louise Erdrich in the two authors. And same case with middle names, we can just shift them and just add their middle names and see where they're actually being placed. So here we have Michael F. Doris, and then we have Louise R. Erdrich. So that's the case for that. And then with MLA, if we have more than 3 authors, 3 or more, we use this thing called et al. And I believe it's a French or Italian, I believe it's a French, or I forget what genre it's from. But we list the first author. Here's Anne Burdick, and then we follow that up with all of the authors, which is et al. That's just a fancy word for and more authors or something, yeah, like that. So Anne Burdick and other authors, that's how you would read that portion. So let's not forget the et al. Portion. And that will be crucial when we're in text citing as well, if you have more than 3 authors in the future. So then, you know, we have these authors, right? And in some cases, we have, you know, if we're citing media and like social media and stuff like that, you can actually cite those as well using like a username. So in this case, I'm using at Courtney Kardashian. This is from Instagram. So if you were to use like handles and YouTube handles and stuff like a Twitter handle, you would use the actual handles that are within the website itself as the author. So in this case, I'm using Courtney Kardashian in this example. And you also have things like, this is a YouTube example. So if you were to cite a YouTube channel, you'd use the actual, the YouTube channel name. So here I'm using Try Guys, and I just substituted that for the author. All right. And in some cases, we do not have a title, an author, right? So if we don't have an author at all, we just start from the title of the source. So we remove the author portion, then we just shift everything all the way to the left. So here we start with the title of the source. So now we're shifting into title of source. Within this portion, we have a primary title. The only difference between the title source is that we have a primary title and then subtitles if you do have any. And with primary title, we have a basic title, and it's in quotations with the period inside the quote. So we're just matching the format to the top here. So questions of transport matches the title of the source at the top. It's the same format. And if you have a subtitle, if there's a subtitle within a source that you want to cite, in that case, we just add a colon and then we add the subtitle. So questions of transport, colon, and then reading, Primo Levi reading Dante. And then this relationship from here with the title source actually, it has a huge relationship with the title of the container. So we have the title source and title container. And the way that works is that, you know, we have this title, right? The questions of transport. Now, what is that title from? And that's where we grab that title of container element from your source. So this title of container acts as like, you know, just like a book, right? If you have a book and then maybe a chapter inside that you want to take out, that chapter is actually going to be the title of the source, and the book's going to be the container that's holding that source. And in this example here, if we were to add a container to this title here, we add maybe the Georgia Review. So this title is a part of the Georgia Review. That's how those two things work there. And if you were to see it together, this is how they would look. The top ones with title source, the bottoms with the title source too, with a subtitle, with the title container. So that's how those would look. And those are supposed to be italicized, but I just saw that just now. The Georgia Review on both were supposed to be italicized as well. All right, so moving on, this is an example of this relationship of title source with title container. And in this case, I'm using an example from the TV show Friends, right? We have this episode called The Last One, and that's directly part of the TV show Friends. So if we were to do this, it's telling the reader that we're only citing that episode from Friends in our paper. And this will go in the back in our works cited page. So that's what that would look like. And then another example is like if you're citing a record, a song. So here I'm using Billie Eilish's Bad Guy song. And the same thing here, it's Bad Guy, which is the title of the song, but it's directly from an album, right? And the album here is When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go From Here? So that's how that relationship works. In some cases, you won't have a title, so then we have just the container. Some cases we don't have a container, then we just have the title itself. And here's another example with an article from Navajo Times. So we have the article, Police Start Shutting Down Hemp Farms, is directly part of Navajo Times itself. So that's how that relationship works. And just in case, as I said before, you know, we might not have a title, right? So then what do we do now? So here we actually just shift everything to the left again, just the same thing that we did with the author. If we don't have an author, we just shift everything. We start with the title source. In this case, we don't have a title. We shift everything to the left. So we'll just enter the title container. And when you see stuff like this, it usually pertains to, you know, in this case, again, I removed the author. So then if I do that, we shift everything to the left, and this directly becomes just starting with the container. And when you're starting with the container, usually in most cases, you're actually just citing a website or a book. You're not actually specifically citing a chapter or an article from a book or something. If you're starting with the container, you're actually citing a whole book or a whole newspaper and things like that, or website. So in this case, when you do this, this immediately tells us, the reader, that this is a website that you're citing. Same thing with this one, the New York Times, we're just citing a website or the newspaper and so forth. Same thing with Time Magazine. That's how they would look. They would start with the container itself. And then Apple is another example. and Facebook, the website Facebook, and so forth. So it's really important to know, to have those kind of, to know what happens when things are missing and when things are there for you to create these citations alone. And then there are in some cases where, you know, we might not even run into like, we might not even have these things at all. We might not have a title of source or title of container. So now what we do, just by looking at this citation here, we do not know where this is actually coming from. The only thing that points us in that direction is maybe the publisher. But other than that, when we look at this, we don't know where this is coming from. All we know is an author, right? So it's our job from here, if we don't have a title or a container, to create and generate sort of a description of what we're citing. And this is where it sort of, it becomes more open, and it is actually recognized by MLA to create these generic descriptions to fit what you're citing. And some examples could be, you know, we have a lot of these here at the Indent College. We do a lot of these, right? Personal interviews. And that could fit as both the title of the source and title of container if we do not have anything. And that's how we would actually cite a personal interviews after the author put that right directly into the title. Same thing with, you know, physical objects. We have, you know, like maybe an oil painting on canvas and so forth. And we have, you know, an audio recording. That's what we do if we do not have a title of source and title of container. All right, so that's the thing with title of source and title of container, and that relationship they have. So, you know, there's a title and the container contains the title, whatever it is. So then now moving into other contributors, this is where we start to sort of, this is this extra information from here, other contributors all the way to the end. And within other contributors, we actually see things like edited by, and you see a lot of these on books, maybe on movie titles, or, you know, anything that has extra wording on a cover of a page or an article or something. You see these sort of things like edited. And what we do within this portion is we just add who it's edited by. So here in this case, this is a book that was maybe edited by Edgar Allan Poe. That's how we would actually attach the wording into that other contributors. We see things like directed by John Krasinski. We have narrated by Edwin Cady, translated by Lydia Tingley. So there's a whole bunch of different contributors out there. This is just 4 that I've chosen. There's a whole listing of those contributors, and there's things like, let's see if I can list them. You have things like adapted by, directed by, I already said directed, introduction by, performance by, illustrated by, you know, all of those things. Those can actually fit within that contributor portion there. So then moving on, actually not moving on. So in some cases, you'll see contributors, right? You'll see more than one actually. So in this case, this is 1 contributor. In some cases, if you do run into 2 contributors that you want to include in your citation, if you want, you can actually push everything after that first contributor and just add it right there. So you can list as much as you can after that portion there. So that's recognized by MLA, is adding as many contributors as you want to your source, your citation. That's the only rule with the contributors portions, that we can actually involve more than 1 contributors in our citation. All right, so moving on to version. So the version, we look at things like editions, and in this case, you know, 2nd edition. We always see those on textbooks and articles and stuff like that, academic journals, even reading books. A lot of these are already listed on the books themselves. And in MLA, we can either write out the whole entire phrase, so second edition, or it's also recognized by abbreviating edition, so second ED, period, and then comma. So both of these are actually okay to use when you're going to involve it in your citation. Then we also see things like cuts. So this is more towards like performance art or any type of artistry. And an example could be a director's cut, of a movie maybe. You can actually see these things on the cover of these published works and stuff like that. You'll see it on the side somewhere, director's cut and things like that. Another one is versions. This one's pretty straightforward, right? Version, number, and things like these are mostly found on textbooks and maybe magazines, maybe comic books and stuff like that. So the next one is number, right? Number here is pretty straightforward. Again, we see things like volumes. So we have a volume 128, right? Then we have numbers. Some published works out there actually have numbers attached to them. And then we have things like episodes, and this is towards multimedia works. And within episodes, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, is within the numbers portion. And this is the only part where it gets a little tricky. So here with episodes, it kind of makes sense to put this season 4 into version, but not necessarily. But within this example here, we can actually manipulate the numbers portion by adding, the episodes within it. So this whole thing here, season 4 and episode 10, actually acts as the number of the citation. And the same thing with volumes, because sometimes within published works too, we see volume 128, then a number attached to it. So that's the only portion where it kind of gets tricky, but it wouldn't affect how you input it into the citation itself at the top. And the next one is publisher. So then within publisher, I think this one's pretty straightforward as well. We see things like within books, you have things like Penguin Press, you have like Naval Times, and so forth. And we have films. It's basically people that created this and they actually published it and released it into the world, kind of thing. So within films, an example could be Walt Disney Pictures. And we have websites, YouTube, newspapers, Gallup Independent. I think we all know what this portion is, the publisher portion. Same thing with publisher date. The only thing with the publisher date is getting the format correct. So within publication date, the format is actually the same as how you would write your date in MLA papers. So it's always that date, month, year format. Same thing with this format here, is that we can abbreviate the months just as we can with our MLA papers as well. So no significant changes there. And you can actually just do the years if there's no dates or no months. You can do time if it's associated with time after the date itself. These are just extra. Time is an optional, and it's extra within the publication date portion. And then we have things like the seasons, like fall 2020. So basically anything involved with the date, but it's just getting the format of the date, month, and year, getting that format correct. Then the last one is locations, and we have things like page numbers. So within the source that you're citing, are there page numbers attached to it? And here, the only rule with the page numbers is that if we're citing more than one page, we'd have to add, you'll see the difference here with this one. So you see that the one on the left is actually multiple pages, right? More than one page. Then the one on the right is actually just one page. And the only significant thing you see here is the P. So PP actually stands for multiple pages, and then P, just a single P, stands for a single page. And you have things like URLs, so links, hyperlinks, and stuff like that. That's I think we all know how to do those as well. So just copy and paste your source into the end here. And then we have what we call digital object identifiers. And a lot of students try to, it's kind of tough to understand what DOIs are, but it's sort of the same thing as a hyperlink. And the only significant thing with DOIs is that it's sort of linked to how permalinks work, so hyperlinks. And DOIs actually have, because sometimes in the web, right, in the internet, some of these links change. Some people remove stuff and stuff like that, and they change the links and stuff like that. But DOIs actually stick to one source throughout the internet. So when you type in a DOI, it actually stays with that significant source through the internet, unless it's not deleted. So that's what those are, the DOIs. All right, so basically, what we went through here is these things here: the author, title, source, title, container, other contributors, version number, publisher, publication date, and location. So knowing these elements here is very crucial in how we cite our sources. And there are some optional elements that we can include, and those include city of publication. And those are mainly with books specifically, and we can add those as well. So an example would just be like New York. And we also have one of the optional elements is the date of access. And we do, a lot of instructors here do ask you to add, the date of access when you actually accessed it, when you read it, when you removed it from the internet and you actually started to read it and stuff like that. That's the date of access. So here you can actually just put access on this date, the same format again as the date. The date should always be formatted in date, month, year in MLA throughout the entire process, even within your papers as well. All right, so we have those two optionals. We have date of access and city of publication. So there are, in some cases, again, just studying this format here, knowing what goes where, how things are in order will actually help you when you're citing sources specifically. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, you're not even going to see a lot of these things here. So maybe a lot of these will be missing. They'll be removed. And these are the only things that you have. The only thing that you need to worry about is just putting them in order. And when you do that, we just push everything that we have all the way to the left, just bring them all together. And that's how we actually cite our sources. So if there's anything at all missing, we just sort of combine it within that format that I showed you. And that's basically how we cite sources in MLA. It's not a lot to crazy study about, but this is the only format that we should be instill to begin to master citations and stuff like that. So again, try to look at this format here. So we have author with a period, we have title, source with quotations and a period, title, container with the italics and comma, other contributors, comma, version, comma, number, comma, publisher, comma, publication date, comma, location, period, date of access, period, and so forth. So now we're going to go into in-text citations. This is where it becomes, we have our sources, right? We have our citations now. And now we're going to talk about how to in-text those citations within your actual paper. And that's literally what an in-text citation is. When your reader is reading through your essay, they find these in-text citations and maybe they want to learn more, or they're interested, they want to learn more about the statistics that you provided in your paper. So it basically directs your reader to that entry within your works cited page. So then The main within in-text citation is that we focus on two of those elements that we provided in our works cited. And those two elements is the author's last name and the page number. The page number is involved with the location, right? And those two things are actually the only thing that we focus on when we're beginning to do in-text citations. And when we have these two here, the only thing we're going to add is the parentheses at the very end with that period at the very, very end. And this here, what you see here is actually an in-text citation already. So we have the author's last name and page number within parentheses and with the period at the end. So this is the basic format, again, of in-text citation. And within text, you know, citations actually, this is an example of in-text citations. You know, within what you're writing, we always have to involve an in-text citation of where we're using the sources that we got from the internet. And so that's how they look. So there's always a period at the very end. I see a lot of students that get confused with where to put a period when they're in-text citing. So let's go put the periods at the very end of the in-text citation, as you'll see here. So you have Danhoff 7, parentheses, period, and so forth. Hurt 127, parentheses, period. So then looking at this format here that I provided, in some cases, again, you're not going to have like maybe an author's last name or page number or something like that. So in the case of an author's last name, we can just start with the title of the source itself. So whatever was in that works cited page, we can start with the title of the source. And I'll show an example later on in the presentation. And then we can just add that page number as well. Again, with parentheses and that period at the very end. And in some cases, you're not going to have a page number. So then, oops. Again, if we don't have a page number, and then we just remove the page number, and then we just close the parentheses. We just close the parentheses there. So here the page number disappeared. So then we just bring everything together. So it's just title of source by itself. So then when we're looking at in-text citations, they're always going to come after quotes. In most cases, they come after quotes. And then in other cases, we have to paraphrase. When we're paraphrasing, after the paraphrase, we actually add the in-text citation. So it sort of acts, it always has to be at the end of the sentence of which and when we're citing the sources itself. So after quotes in most cases, and paraphrasing when we're paraphrasing the sources. So and here's an example with how in-text citations work. So here we have this citation, right? We have the author, title, source, and so forth. We already learned that. And this is actually at the end in the works cited page at the very end of the page, at the very end of your essay. And now we see how that relationship works with these in-text citations so that the reader knows where to find the sources that you're providing from the in-text citation. So in this case here, if I were to put this quote here, this, you know, I'm pulling this from, so reading is just half of literacy, the other is writing. The quote that I'm pulling is from the source at the top, and that's directly in the works cited page. So how could we add an in-text citation, right? So to do that, we actually just, again, the format, we add the last name and the specific page number that we're quoting from. So in this case, it's Barron, which is the last name, and then we have page 19. So that's how we would do it. And this is tricky, and I didn't explain that, but the page number within the in-text citation actually doesn't have, you know, the PP or the P. It does with an APA, but with an MLA, it's actually just by itself. So here we have Barron and page 19. That's how you would read that in-text citation. And there's different types of ways that we do in-text citations based on how we're talking within our sentences. In this case, when you're reading the black portion, we're just quoting the text, right? But in some cases, if we involve the author within the sentence, so here we have, according to Naomi Barron, reading is just half a literacy, the other is writing. And in in-text citation rules, if we're involving the author within the sentence, then we don't need to involve them in the in-text citations because we're actually involving them in the sentence already. So if we have their name within the sentence, just follow up with the page number itself. That's how in-text citations work with that portion there. So here we have the author, and then we have the page number there. So then in some cases, you'll come across, you're sorting two sources, right? We have this Naomi Barron, we have them both listed in our works cited page at the very end. And we're citing two of her works. We have Redefining Reading and Redefining Writing, so two different books. And if we're in a case that we're citing, we just have to make sure we're clear in our in-text citation. So here again, I'm pulling the quote, but which one am I quoting from, right? So this is where it gets a little tiny bit tricky. But again, we add the author's last name, and then this is where we add the title of which source and then the page number. This is only in this case, in these type of cases where there's two people with the same last name or two of the same people with two different works. And so that's how we would do that. We would add the author's last name and the title of which source, because there's the same last name, and then the page number itself. Let's take a good look at that portion there. All right, so in some cases, we won't have an author, right, in our in-text citation, not in-text, our works cited page. And we start our citation itself is starting with the title. So what do we do then with in-text citations in this case? So in this case, again, the same text, if we don't have an author, a way to do an in-text citation is actually just involving the title itself. And if your title is actually really long, you would actually can just use like maybe the first 3 or 4 words within the title. And then that would be it. So in this case, there's no author, so then we have to substitute it with the title itself. So title and then page number. Same case, if there's no page number, and that's just how our works cited looks, then we just remove the page number itself and then just close everything at the end. So this is how our in-text citation would be. So it's basically making that connection for the reader of how they can actually find the source at the very end of your paper in the works cited page. So we're just manipulating the in-text citation along with the works cited page itself. How does that work together? There has to be a connection between there for people to, go see the sources that you're actually citing if they want to learn more about some of these things. So in this case, I always like to involve the personal interviews because a lot of students do those interviews around here at the college. We have to involve a lot of research, asking around, people locally around here. So in this case, if this were a personal interview with, Thomas Littleben, a way to in-text cite this, and this is directly involved with multimedia, right? Because this is a personal interview with audio. So in this case, this is directly from the text that we're involving in our essay. So let's say I wrote this, right, in my essay. That the net educational philosophy is a paradigm instilled within us from the time of our existence. And now how do I add the in-text citation? Because that's what Thomas Littleben said. And a way to do it is actually the same thing. Always follow that format, last name. But in this case, you see something there. You have a whole bunch of numbers, but this is actually telling time within the audio itself. Because it's audio, we have to involve the time in which he actually said that, if we want to. But if in some cases we do not want to cite the specific time, we can just close it off with after little bin. So it just be his last name by itself. So the way to read this is actually in hour, minute, second format. So we have hour, minute, second, and this dash means continuance from the second. So 32 to 40 seconds. So between there, he said this quote. And if it's, yeah, and so forth. So hour, date, hour, minute, second. That's how the format is for MLA. But again, if you don't want to involve the time in which you said that, then you can just close it off here with the parentheses, just that little bin. All right, so the basic thing with, again, coming back to this again, is just always sticking to the author's last name and page number. If we don't have a page number, remove it. If we don't have an author's last name, we insert the title and so forth. So it's basically knowing the formats themselves. So we have this author's last name, which is in-text citation, author's last name and page number, and we have the source, the citation itself within the works cited page. So knowing the actual formats of how they're listed can actually help you identify some of those elements and put things together and how it all works together. So basically, that is it for the works cited page and the citations itself, in-text citations. So what I also wanted to show you was, even though I do encourage you to actually learn the format and how the listing goes and how everything works, there's easier ways now within these days on how to, automatically generate some of these things. That we have websites like, BitMe, Purdue OWL. Those websites have like citation generators, and you can just copy or paste a URL into their website, and it'll generate, this citation for you. Some cases, they'll kind of be mixed up, but it's your job to put them where they have to be. But the other thing I wanted to show you as well, and this is going back to formatting, right? And when we go into Microsoft Word, this is my iPad version, but I want to show you a trick on how to do MLA and APA formatting, really quickly, and you don't have to, worry about it. But within this portion here, within templates, if you go to Microsoft Word and you hit the search button within templates, you'll see something. If you hit MLA or APA, it actually generates these templates available for you. So in this case, I'll click on MLA since we're doing MLA right now. And if we do this, it generates this template for us. And this is how MLA formatting is, right? We have our last name. These you can just click them, and then you can automatically just fill them in all the way through, and so forth. So but the main thing I want to focus on was the works cited page and how it's formatted at the very end. So here, it's listed differently here, but it's the same format that I've presented on. And here, when you're looking at this, the main thing I wanted to focus on was the formatting portion. So we have this page number here, and it's continuing from the entire page, from the entire paper itself. We always have to add that there. And then our title of this page is works cited, and this should be centered at the very top with no stylistics. And then we have our sources here. This is where we start to source, cite our sources from here. And the only thing I wanted to talk about was this hanging indent here. And within MLA guidelines, when we're adding sources to our works cited page, we have to add this hanging indent here. And you can actually do that when you go into, this is a little different what you see on my screen, but you go into the paragraph options within Microsoft Word, and then in there you'll see indentation. Within indentation, you'll see special, and then you'll just hit hanging indent, and that's when this happens here. So everything after the first line will be indented. And this helps us organize our sources. So if there were another one here, let's see, it'll just go on like that. That's how our sources would be listed. And the last thing is making sure these here are in alphabetical order. So all of your sources here should be listed in alphabetical order by last name, as you can see, just like that. All right, I think that is it for now. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. Was there any questions from anyone? All right, so I'll ask Deanna, can you send off the evaluation while I'm closing? So, yeah. Deanna, are you there? So that's basically what I wanted.
I'm getting ready.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to go over today is how to, look at the format of citations themselves and what you can and what you cannot do, and then how to directly involve that in text citations. And a lot of it is just based off of, those two formats that I gave you, and the elements is just identifying those elements and how they work together, and so forth. So it's not much. When you get to APA, that's when everything gets sort of more confusing because they still have those same elements, right? But in APA, they're actually shifting those elements around now, and there's different type of language requirements and things like that. And the only thing with in-text citations with APA, an example can be with APA. Remember, we had the author's last name and page number. Like I said, MLA doesn't require to have the PP or the P within the in-text citation, but within APA, they require that you have that within your in-text citation. So they're two totally different things, but they're sort of similar in a way with just the elements themselves, but they're just listed a little differently. And I'll be going over those ones at 3:30 today in 30 minutes. If you guys want to sit in on that one as well. And I'll be, I think that would be it for today. All right, so Deanna's gonna attach a evaluation to the chat box. So I do encourage you guys again to answer, fill out the evaluation in areas, that you think you've improved on, what should we involve next time, and things like that. So we'll just wait for her to upload that, then I can end the webinar from there. So again, if you guys—
Quanah, there's a question. Let's see. Do you have any tutorials in the evening?
Not now, but I'm trying to involve everything between 8 and 5, the times that we're open here at the Learning Center. And maybe later on in the semester, I will consider doing some webinars after hours in the evening, because I know students, they might be more available in the evenings rather than during the times that we're open. And that's the same thing with tutoring after hours. I still help students after hours, but that's just something, that's just my personal, just what I prefer. I just want to help as much students as I want. So that's why I do after hour tutoring, stuff like that. But if you guys want to schedule an appointment or tutoring session, you can actually do that in several ways. You can go to the main Indent College webpage. Right on that main page, you'll see at the somewhere right there in the middle, you'll see online tutoring. You can just click that and schedule an appointment. or you can go to My Indent College within Warrior Web. That's where you can see all your bills, your grades, and stuff like that. And within that portion there, you can go within your students tab, and at the very bottom, you'll see Learning Center resources. And then within that portion there, that's where everything that we provide is literally there. We have our YouTube videos, we have links to our Facebook, YouTube, we have our hours, tutor schedules, we have great resources, we have MLA, APA documentation, so they look sort of like this. This is for APA. Then all of these documents back here also on our My Indent College as well. So basically how we're running everything is within that internal website on My Indent College. So I encourage you guys to check that out as well. All right, so Deanna actually posted the evaluation. So if you guys can do that for me, that would be great. So just go ahead and click that, and then I'll go ahead and end the webinar. All right, so thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I really appreciate having you guys hear this informative session. It's a crucial thing to know how to cite sources and stuff like that. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this informative session. Again, we have this same session tomorrow. It's a duplicate session. So tell your friends, tell people that that are struggling with MLA citations and stuff like that. Same thing with APA. So APA we have at 3:30 again after this. All right, so that's it for this webinar. Thank you guys for attending. I will see you guys in the future.